Rock and roll may live forever, but we only retire once. Kevin Lamour of Our Financial Plans and Quadris Investment Services offers a large range of financial solutions from some of the biggest leaders in the investment and insurance landscape of Canada. See how a solid financial plan built with friendly and professional advice can help. Find out more at ourfinancialplans.ca or give them a call at 705-949-1316. Hey folks, and welcome to the Lonesome Cowboy Podcast. And we're trying out a new platform today with my special guest, James Gordon. Where are you based in, James? Toronto?
I'm in Guelph, Ontario.
Guelph, Ontario. Right on. So how's the weather in Guelph?
It's a pretty nice sunny day here. Not as spring-like as I'd like to see. How are you doing up there?
Rain today, so which is good. And I'm sure there's still snow in the bush, but you know how it goes.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. First things, James, I want to hear about your time in politics.
Oh, okay.
That has me intrigued.
Sure. Well, I have, as you probably have noticed, a fair bit of political bent in some of the material that I write. And I've always, because I've been on the road for 50 years now, it's always been important to me that when I'm home, I take part in community as best as I can, right?
Okay.
And so I sort of got roped in. Actually, it was actually Charlie Angus and Jack Layton.
Oh yeah.
They both called me on the same day. They worked on a plan between the two of them to talk me into running first provincially, because they both said, "Hey, James, it's the same gig. You got to communicate with people. You got to listen to them. You have to try to represent them as best you can. Find their story be the voice for them." So I said, "Okay, I'll give it a try." And then I didn't win provincially, but I ended up being a Guelph City Councillor for 8 years.
Oh, cool.
And I don't regret it. I'm glad that I didn't run again for a third term, because I still have this fantasy of being, the huge international rock star that I truly believe myself to be. So
how's that going?
yeah, yeah, it was a part-time gig. So I was able to be on the road at the same time, but I think that I wasn't being as effective at either one. So
Gotcha.
I'm glad to be focusing on it now that the music business, as you know, it's totally unsustainable.
Gotcha. So here's your trick now with the city council, where you did you run for re-election and not succeed, or
no,
just one term and gone?
I did 2 terms, won both times, but I decided not to run for a third term because 8 years really was enough, and it was time to hand it over to some younger folks too, because I somehow noticed that I'm not as young as I used to be anyway.
Yeah, that keeps coming up every time I get up in the morning.
That's right.
I admire you, sir. I was asked once, and I looked at them like they had 3 heads because I had no idea what they were talking about. And it's like, are you kidding me, man? Seriously? And yeah, so and my big thing is I get ticked off too quick, and I would snap. And yeah,
right.
I can't stand bureaucracy.
But the interesting lesson I learned from it, because my material does tend to be on the political side or the activist side, community side. I think that folks like us can be more effective in our messaging than folks that are elected to office, because we can say what we want, and we don't have to adhere to certain guidelines and party principles. And I think I'm reaching more people now with the messaging I'm trying to get out there than I was as an elected official. So there is that.
Well done. So, do you often get confused with the commissioner of Gotham City, the commissioner of police?
Actually, funny, funny you mentioned that because when my campaign signs were up, everyone used to always paint the Batman logo on over them. So,
Oh yeah, yeah. There you go. Yeah. If my camera panned around the rest of the room, you'd see my Batman collectibles, and then you'd say,
oh wow,
"Oh,
I get it.
well, they're
I
not really
get it.
collectible. I just like
Yeah.
toys." So there you go. Anyways, is there a notable moment in your career, James, when, and I take this from a business perspective as opposed from a music creator's perspective, because it was the same way with when I was a full-time photographer. I mean, I started, part-time, and then it built, and all of a sudden you go, okay, I got to make more time for this. So you go at it full-time. Was there any at that point in your career, because I'm sure with music it's different, where you said, okay, I can't say comfortable. That's not a good word, but I feel better about my trajectory where I'm at right now, and I can breathe a little bit better. Do you remember
Uh,
that specific moment?
that's a pretty cool question. I think I started the band that I started playing with professionally was Tamarack,
Oh yeah.
and our mandate was kind of we started doing traditional music, mostly traditional Canadian folk songs, and then we started eventually taking that same sentiment and writing original songs. We had two writers in the band. Alex Sinclair was the other one, and there was a point maybe around 1983 or 1984 when some of that material was resonating with people, you could tell, but it also had an angle that I don't think anyone else was exploring in Canadian music at that time, being about the Canadian landscape and heritage and culture, being a voice. Um, and there was a certain point, I think maybe when our second album came out, I thought, hey, I think we're onto something here. I've got an angle, and it separates me from all the other middle-aged white guitar players that way. You have something that you're working on.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, that's good to know. And I mean, I hope I get to experience that myself at some point in
Sure.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have written symphonies, you've written
I have.
operas. What's your background? Because that's not some usual stuff that I get in a talk with a folk musician.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, I have a degree in music from right here
Cool.
in the University of Guelph, and I
Cool.
did study, and I studied opera training. Vocal was my major. My
Mm.
vocal teachers probably would die if they learned that the main lesson they taught me was how to last 6 nights playing in a smoky bar room, right?
That was an elective. You didn't take that one?
Yeah, yeah. Um, but and it took me a few years, Brian, actually, before I at the same time, it actually took me 8 years to get a 3-year degree because I was already out on the road being a
Oh,
folk singer,
cool.
and it took me a few years to find a synthesis between those two musical worlds. Um, like the fact that I could take a folk song that I'd written or a traditional song and arrange it for choir or for orchestra. Those are skills that I could bring in, and I hadn't really thought of them being all in the same realm before. So it just
Interesting.
added to the toolbox, I think.
Interesting. Very interesting. That's cool. Well, my wife has a degree in music too, so um,
Okay.
I've been forced to learn ever so minor theory, just enough so we can converse, so she knows what I'm talking about.
Right.
It can be a
Fair.
communication issue sometimes. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
So, in regards to what you were talking about in your music, and then getting hit on by Jack Layton and Charlie Angus to be a politician and doing your time. uh, Tell me about your social activism and some of the things that you've been active with.
Oh, okay. Well, it's interesting that there's a correlation between what I've been addressing in my music and what I've addressed in my activism and politics. So the activism really that's sort of spread into my music, I think you could center it around the value of community rather than the big corporate interests that we seem to be too influenced by.
Mm.
So that puts me in the social camp, I guess. But when wherever I am and whatever I'm listening to, I'm always trying to find where's the value in just human beings getting along with each other and nurturing one another rather than being a slave to the corporate structure that I think is ruining this country in some ways. So,
Interesting. Yeah. It's it's there's a lot to you can be active about today. I guess that's the way I want to put it.
for sure. And well, you mentioned I've written quite a few musicals, and they tend to have a political theme. I did one on homelessness and one on water issues. Here in Guelph, by the way, I was the founder of a group in town here called the Water Watchers. We're the largest city in North America that relies on an aquifer under the city, groundwater for our water supply.
Wow.
And it turned out that we were giving 3.5 million liters of that a day to Nestle to bottle their water. We have a Nestle bottling plant for free, basically.
Wow.
And so having sort of grown up with that, you thought, wait a minute, that's one corporate interest that is not serving this community. So I was able to actually had a plant called, instead of Nestle, it was Nasty with the same logo. And I had to get our local member of parliament was a lawyer, and he told me how I could put out that musical without getting sued. So, but, and yes,
I love
I
it.
always like to follow those different angles. Um, and I'm also finding now I have this new show. I'm getting ready to do it at Hughes Room in a couple of weeks in Toronto called Smashing the Oligarchy. And
Oh yes,
uh,
yes.
yeah, and I learned from that. The reason for putting that together was I've been long a climate change activist,
Yep.
and I did a whole musical called Gordon's Emergency Climate Musical. And it went well. People will say, well, what's the follow up? Because it keeps changing. And I realized that you can't really address climate change issues while those oligarchs, those billionaires are running the show, because they will do everything in their power just to wring the last drop of oil out of
Mm.
the earth. And they've known, they say that the big oil companies actually knew 50 years ago that we were all screwed by what we were doing with the environment, but it would cost them their profit to reveal that. So that's something I'm trying to shine a light on these days too.
Gotcha. Yes, responsible corporate behavior is a new
That's
trick
it.
we have to teach those old dogs, right? So
It's a
speaking
bit of
of yeah. So speaking of the smashing the oligarchy, when did that
yeah.
when did you write that? And tell me about the book, because it says something, it's words and music. Is it what is it?
Yes. I call myself the James Gordon song and rants man in it. So I have I have 15 songs, but there's videos and visual images and rants, like a dialogue that goes in between them. It's about 90 minutes long, and I first launched it last summer here in Canada, and then in
Cool.
the fall I took it down, even though it's, I took it down to the headquarters of the oligarchs. I did it in Washington D.C. and
Wow.
I made it home. Yeah.
No kidding.
But the interesting thing, you asked before about when I had those moments that keep you going.
Yeah.
They were so great, and a packed audience. They were so grateful I made the effort to come. and that I was saying things in the show that generally they probably think that ICE was going to pick them up off the streets if they said that stuff, right? So it felt like I had a job.
Gotcha. Well, now
And
what year was this?
that was just last fall. Yeah.
Oh wow, geez.
Yeah. So I
And
was in
you,
the middle of all the everything then too. So a lot of people, like, this is how weird things have gotten, Brian, because it was a national CBC story, an interview that I was even thinking of going. Right. So what kind of world have we got now that a guy with a guitar is worried about getting sent to El Salvador if he crosses the border, you know? So, um, but I have that kind of personality that made me want to do it even more, right? Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I would question the same thing. You know, like to go and do something like that because,
Yeah.
well, I've vowed never to set foot and never, let alone play there. I mean, we have to get the other issue
Yeah.
of the visas that cost,
I
you
know.
know,
Oh, it's terrible now. But I should say it comes down to economics too. I've been playing there for 40 years probably, and it's always been maybe about 30% of my income playing in the States.
mhm.
And do I give that up and what do I replace it with? So I I prefer to lobby for better conditions and making it safer to go, and not that it's a total banana republic corporate ripoff what they want to charge for work visas now. So
Mhm.
it's a total scam, and that needs to be addressed because even though they were grateful that I came, but I had to say to those same on that same tour, I don't know if I'll be able to come again.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I had, we had a close relationship with the United States because that's where my wife was born, but she's since divorced her entire family since they all wear red
Wow.
hats. Yeah, exactly. The crazy world. Tell me about this other project I read on your website, the Timani Letu project, and
Yeah,
pardon me if I pronounced it wrong.
close enough. That's in Africa, and it's in the DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo,
Mhm.
which is not democratic at all.
Yeah, really.
While I was a city councillor and a politician, I I was at a conference that was centered around refugees and new Canadians, and I met a guy that lives not too far from me here now, but he's from the Congo, and he described in great detail how desperate his village was with disease and starvation, and the rebels are controlling the area. And he said, "You got to help." And being a sucker, I said, "Well, I'll see what I can do." So our whole effort is to try to bring aid to the village that he's from. It's so bad that if like they don't even have water that they can get to, and if they do, if a young woman goes to find water outside the village and it's controlled by the rebels, she has to pay with her body to get water for her family. You know, and
Great.
pretty desperate. Although the project is, we just sent them some money a couple weeks ago, but because the rebels and the warfare going on there, it's not safe to go. The last two times I've been to Africa, I was in neighboring Rwanda, where there was a lot of expats from the DRC there, and we had meetings, but it was not safe. You see, I'm not totally stupid. I'll go to the States, but I wouldn't, I wouldn't
But
go there.
yeah, no kidding. That's funny. That's great. Um, Musicians today, they like travel. They're to me, they're like traveling salespeople. And
Sure.
now I'm talking about the business part from the artist side of the stuff here.
Well, yeah.
To me, they're like traveling salespeople because, you know, when you're a salesperson, you got to go out and you got to build your customer base and stuff like that. And it appears that's what you know, goes with with musicians when they're touring. Um, and as they're building, then they can build on top of that kind of thing. Is that a fair assessment of, or would you put it another way in order for in how an artist builds an audience?
I think you have to have a brand, I guess. Is that what you're saying that
Well,
you're offering? But
yeah, I guess it bounces off the whole the thing that Stephen Fearing has sent me, and I just asked him some general advice, and he said to me, he says, basically it boils down to you got to keep touring until you can play a place and get 250 people to come out to see you. Then you're getting there.
yeah, yeah. Well, but we've talked about this before, Brian, where the tension in the business now, and it's almost an exaggeration to even call it a business some of the time.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
The is that there was a golden age, I'd say back in the 80s, when anybody in the music business is providing something of value, you would expect to get properly compensated for that.
Gotcha.
And the venues themselves were in a better position because if you were offering something that would draw some people out, they could fill a hall. And it's all changed for things since COVID. I would say that the average theater that I perform in now, I'm mostly doing theaters or halls. They're all telling me that they're cut in half as to what people are actually coming out. People aren't even going out; they're staying home watching Netflix, right?
Yep.
And the internet has been a strange pro and con that goes with it.
Yeah.
Because now your music can be everywhere at all times, and it's doubly hard. So you can get out there, but it's doubly hard to get any revenue from that.
Mm-hmm.
And in those golden years, I did pretty well just with CBC radio airplay, which they've seemed to have moved away from playing folk music at all. And you could sort of know, you could chart a course and say, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to tour here, and I'm going to put out records, and people would actually buy records.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just so much in flux now that it's really hard to get a handle on it. And I think I get by because I've been at it so long that at least people kind of know what I'm doing and who I am.
Yeah.
I agree for the younger folks coming up that don't know how to. There's very few musicians starting out now that have any expectation that they're even going to make a livelihood from it. Right. And that wasn't the case before. Like I mentioned before, when I started out, there's that. Well, go back up just a couple weeks ago. I played at a venue down Eastern Ontario, and there was a very poor turn, lovely crowd, but there just wasn't enough of them to make it pay. And the sound woman said, "Hey, welcome to the 50th anniversary of the $100 gig."
Ow. Ooh.
And the reason she said that was like, when I started out, I'd make $100 a night, but my rent, I have a song about this. 50 years ago, my rent was $110 a month, right? and gas was cheap. So I could make a living on those $100 gigs.
Yeah, you could have
in the interim, all the pay has stayed similar because there's so much competition and venues are struggling. So, but the expenses have probably quadrupled. Like, just with the travel costs, hotels, food. So the math doesn't work. So I mostly do this out of habit now.
Yeah, it's a crazy world. Let me ask you this question. And I was going to ask you after the fact, but I figured, I'm going to let him
go for it.
Spew on this one here. When you talk about playing mostly theaters, and this may come as a question from other emerging artists such as myself, isn't it dangerous financially? Because you could either end up canceling, or if you're four-walling the place, which is usually how most of them will work with an emerging artist because no one wants
Well,
to take a chance on them, is if you're four-walling the place, if you don't sell tickets, you cancel, you still got to pay out money. So how do you feel
um,
about that kind of stuff?
well,
How do you make it so you're not paying
I
not to
think
play?
I think that I'm still on the old school that I, I won't venture in, like, I won't rent a theater.
Mhm.
I know that's very common now. Um, I'll make sure that it's a shared risk, and that's a term that I use a lot these days. So the theater has to have has to take a chance that they're going to sell enough tickets to make it worth their while, and I have to take a chance too. So I usually won't enter into a contract unless there's a guarantee anyway. But in the old days, it was always just a flat fee. You've got,
Right, yeah.
I would say, how many how many seats have you got? If they got 200 seats, then I'd say, well, and as the it's $25, then let's make sure that we each do well with that. So I I totally agree with you that if you're taking the risk and renting a hall, uh, there's no way that you would enter into it. And maybe that goes back to your Stephen Fearing quote, unless you know that you're going to put enough bums in those seats. Uh, and one way to do that, I would call this scarcity, I guess. Um, the big hall here in Guelph is called the River Run Center. I only play in Guelph maybe once every 2 years because they won't they won't hire me and expect to fill their hall if they know I'm playing down at the pub Saturday night for tips.
Right,
So
right, right.
you keep them hungry. So that you have to keep a demand, and yet the trade-off with that is that things are so sped up these days that if you don't show up in a part of the country every year, they've forgotten you, right?
Yeah, that's about it.
You have to
Yeah.
find that balance, I think, sometimes. Like I make sure that I tour the maritime provinces once every year, British Columbia once every year, probably once every 2 years in the prairies. And then the Ontario shows are mostly runouts that I'll do instead of a whole tour. I'll do a few dates here and there, just like when I saw you up in the Sioux. I
Mhm.
think that was just 3 shows, but they were all pretty good shows, and it all worked. And I wasn't in a strange bed that many nights in a row.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't know how you guys get book tours and then all the gigs stick, because
Yeah.
I'm just trying to book a couple of Northern Ontario legions and I can't get
Oh yeah.
them to commit.
Yeah.
They said,
Yeah.
"What dates do you wanna come?" I said, "Don't worry about the
Right.
dates. Just tell me if you wanna do it or not."
That's right. Well, it's funny that you should say that. Just today, another thing that's changed about consumers of music. I'm doing a show down in Prince Edward County, down Pat King,
Mhm,
um,
mhm.
in maybe 3 weeks, and they emailed me today and said, "Well, maybe we should cancel because we haven't sold hardly any tickets yet." And the trade off there is that you probably know this. People now are buying their tickets at the last minute.
Yes, exactly.
They used to say, "Oh, I better get a ticket there," but they're not sure that, is it gonna be safe, or should I wear a mask, or, what's the deal, or have I got is there a good movie on Netflix that night? So they're choosing the last minute, but that drives promoters nuts.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
they wanna know, like, they've gotta hire their staff. And so what I said to this guy, I said, "Well, are you finding people aren't buying their tickets much in advance anyway?" And he said, "Yeah." So I said, "Well, let's not bail yet." And it was a good warning to get some more promotion going. But again, the rules have all changed with that, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, it really has. Yeah, it's amazing in that respect. Now, there's no magic bullet when it comes to having a career in music, and when someone's looking for that info, and
Right.
there isn't one. So what do you feel are maybe the necessities, the must-haves information beyond the music for a musician as they get going?
Oh, like what skill sets do you need?
What information do you need? What kind
Oh,
of maybe even skill set too in that respect, that if they're going to
yeah.
go out there and do this,
Well,
because there's all kinds of information out there, but what is really the serious information they need to know?
right. I think it depends on if you're looking for artistic success, doesn't equate to sustainable economic success anymore.
Mhm.
I think it used to. If you were good, people would find out about you, come and see you, and they'd buy your records. Um, but now a mark of success to me would be if you have going back to that one of your early questions about what was the moment when I realized that I kind of had something to offer. um, Everyone needs to find an angle that's true. Be true to yourself, and yet you know that you have to find something that separates you from all the other acts that might be in the same genre. Um,
Mhm.
so to do that, I think you have to. I used to always laugh when they called the music business, and I I didn't get in it thinking I had to be a businessman,
Yeah, really.
and you really do now. So
Yes.
a lot of folks that just have the raw talent, the passion, they get lost in the shuffle if they can't also find that skill set, as word I used before, to know how to market yourself, to
Yeah.
create that brand, and it's a whole different level. And I grieve too. I talk about how hard it is for young people. I see such talented people that haven't developed that or haven't got the support they need with management to try to rise up above that. Um, so there really is so much more to consider now. And but how I've addressed it, Brian, is that because I don't like the business side of it, the only way I struggle through it is to try to make that a creative activity too.
Yeah, good
Because we're
point. Well said.
we're all we're all creators. That's why we're doing this in this business. We want to create art. Business, I haven't found a way to actually say, okay, you did something artful there, James. But if you if you if you use your if we're all in this because we have a creative spirit, how can you turn that spirit towards the business side of things too, in the
Yeah.
way that it
Yeah.
becomes all one kind of unified package, right?
Yeah, yeah, and I get that because and the music business plays it safe too. I mean, I believe
Um,
there's the 1%ers and the 99 percenters in the music world as
oh,
there is in the real world.
exactly. Yeah.
And
And in
when
fact,
you got
yeah,
you got people there who program festivals. I always said no great art can be created by committee,
right.
but
Yeah.
you got these
Well,
festivals, and what do? They curate or they pick,
yeah.
but they
Yeah.
pick people they know are going to
Sure.
fill the thing.
Yeah.
And I get it because they got to make money.
Well,
But by the same
well,
token, there's somebody needs to start somewhere. And somebody says,
I
"Oh yeah,
know.
I've started this festival
Yeah.
and it's going to be for us people who are just starting out." And yet there's
Well,
all these names on it. It's like, come
yeah.
on.
Well, I think the most successful festivals and clubs and theaters have found a bit of a combo because, like some theaters will have you buy a ticket for a whole series, right? And there'll be 6 artists or something like that. But maybe 4 of them are artists that you're likely to know, and they'll throw in 2 artists that are developing because if they don't, that audience that knows those artists, they're all going to be dead in 20 years. And where will
Yeah.
they be? So
Yeah.
they have to nurture that next generation along.
Yeah.
And the ones that don't, I don't think they're doing themselves any favors by doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's just like radio stations, right? That's why people love their cover tunes. They love their familiar
Sure.
music. And they're
Yeah.
programming festivals the same way they're programming, top 40 stations.
Yeah.
Play,
Yeah. Well,
because can't sell ads if we don't have listeners, and listeners want to hear stuff they know that's familiar because they don't want to get out of their comfort zone.
that's right. but then that's where there's the shared risk again.
Mm-hmm.
Might have mentioned before when we spoke earlier that I go down to Nashville every now and then to try to hustle my songs, and they only want, like, the first time I went down, they said, well, unless your song sounds kind of like a Taylor Swift song, we don't want it. And
Yeah, that's about it.
wouldn't the listener get tired if they turned on the radio and all the songs sounded like that? So, and that the
And they
artists that
do.
yeah, but the artists that like Taylor Swift herself, she didn't sound like anybody else, so that's why she got to be Taylor Swift.
Yeah, exactly.
So sooner or later, they need to take risks a little bit, and they need to look for something new and adventurous. And it might not be the safest investment, but I think that's going to stand by them in the long term. If they have that, they have to be
Yeah, I agree.
creative too.
I agree. Yep, I agree.
And again, we'll use that Nashville scene as an example. I went down with a songwriting partner, Catherine Wheatley, the first time, and we thought, okay, well, the new country is their big thing there, so we decided the whole drive down, we were just listening to new country stations, and we couldn't do it. Like,
No, it's yeah, it's a pop song.
Yeah.
You know? Lady
Yeah.
Gaga can write a pop like a new country song,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
you and I
No,
can't because it's like, what the hell is that?
Nothing resonated for me that I was hearing, so I certainly
Yeah.
didn't want to imitate that. But I can
Yeah.
also see why, if that's what they're looking for, what I was offering wouldn't resonate that much with them. So, but but I grumble about that, but I have been more fortunate than many that have other artists cover my songs. So
Yeah,
but
you've been really good that way, haven't you?
I think it's mostly not because I sounded like something else, but because I had something that maybe stood out for them. Like, oh, that's something different. Maybe
Yeah, that's
I'd like
cool.
to try
Very
that.
cool idea. James, tell all the people where they can find you and about you and the whole deal
right.
and socials and all that fun
Okay.
stuff.
Yeah, jamesgordon.ca is my website, and I try to keep it reasonably up to date. At least you can find where I'm playing. And jamesgordonmusic.bandcamp.com is my preferred way if you're wanting to download my music
There
or
you go.
stream it. If you go there, I actually make a little bit of revenue from it, as opposed to the dreaded Spotify, which pays 0.003 cents a stream. So,
Dun, dun, dun.
and I'm pretty busy on Facebook, James Gordon. I'm not that big of an Instagram person, or I certainly don't do the X or Twitter or everything, because that got too darn corporate for me too.
Yeah, that gets crazy. Excellent stuff, James. Thank you so much for coming
Yeah.
on the program. I really appreciate it, and your
Great
pearls of
to chat with
wisdom. Thank you, sir. I greatly appreciate it.